at the Easter lunch, held in the absurdly expensive private room of a downtown restaurant. My sister Rachel stood up. She tapped her champagne flute with a manicured nail. "If I could have everyone's attention," she said, her voice dripping with that rehearsed lifestyle blogger sweetness. "We have a small family announcement. We've been updating the new family trust. And after a family vote," she paused, looking right at me with a devastating smile, "we've decided to formally remove Sarah. It's unanimous." Silence. And then, clapping. My cousin Megan, my uncle Stephen, even my mother Karen. They all clapped. I just smiled softly, placed my fork down, and said, "Well, then I guess you won't be needing this." I slid a thick, leather-bound folder onto the center of the table. The sound it made was quiet, but Rachel's smile faltered. She snatched it, ripped it open, and she screamed. Araf. Blood-curdling scream that had waiters running to the door. Have you ever felt like a total alien in your own family? Like you were speaking a different language? Let me know your story down in the comments. I really want to know who's part of this community. To understand the scream, you have to understand the folder. And to understand the folder, you have to understand my family. It wasn't always this theatrical. For most of my life, it was just a quiet, grinding erosion of my boundaries. See? In my family, there were two roles. My sister, Rachel, was the golden girl. She had the big personality, the lifestyle blogger dreams, the constant, captivating drama. I was the capable child. I was the one who got a data analytics degree, the one who built a career, the one who was so logical and so organized, the one who was, in their eyes, stable. But when you're the capable child in a broken family, you're not allowed to have problems. You are the solution to everyone else's. Your only job is to absorb, to provide, and to stabilize. And that stability, it's a cage. They don't love you. They love your function. My function, for the last 10 years, was being the family ATM. It started small. Sarah, can you cover dinner? You know Ryan's between projects. Then it grew. My mom, Karen, was the master of the tearful phone call. I don't know what happened. She'd sob. The credit card bill just got away from me. And just like that, I was wiring $25,000 to pay off a shopping spree she couldn't admit to. I paid $12,000 for my cousin Megan's graduate school tuition. She cried and said I was saving her life. A year later, I paid $15,000 to cover my brother-in-law Ryan's urgent business debt from a startup that never actually started. He didn't even say thank you. He just nodded and said, "It's about time you invested in family." Every holiday, every birthday, every emergency, I was the one who paid, and I paid in silence because I thought that's what you did. I thought that was the price of admission. I thought that one day, if I just paid enough, they'd finally see me and not just my bank account. I was wrong. I didn't just send the money, I was investing. I was convinced that if I just tried one more time, if I just sent one more payment, I could finally buy the love and respect I'd been denied my whole life. It's called the sunk cost fallacy. But this was for my heart. You've already invested so much pain and hope that walking away empty-handed feels worse than continuing to pay the price. I paid for Rachel's $4,500 emergency dental work that turned out to be veneers. I paid $8,000 for a family vacation. I was guilted into funding but couldn't attend because of work. I was so deep in the red on my emotional balance sheet that I couldn't see a way out. Until 3 months ago, Rachel and Ryan invited me to dinner. This was unusual. They never invited me anywhere unless they were picking up a check I had already paid. We sat at a trendy, overpriced restaurant. And for 20 minutes, they pitched me. They had a grand vision, a wellness cafe. They used words like holistic, curated, and synergy. Ryan, who hadn't held a steady job in 5 years, explained that his role was chief brand visionary. Finally, Rachel leaned in, her eyes wide, with fake sincerity. We have the vision. Sarah, we just need the capital. We just need you to co-sign the business loan. I took a sip of water. How much? $200,000. I didn't flinch. I didn't get emotional. I just did my job. I became the data analyst. Okay. I said, where's your cash flow plan? Your 5-year projection? Your cost of goods sold analysis? Ryan scoffed. God. Sarah, can you be human for 5 seconds? This isn't about spreadsheets. It's about a feeling. Rachel just stared at me. You don't need a plan when you have family, she said. And that's when it finally clicked. I looked at these two people, my sister and her husband, and I didn't see family. I saw negative numbers. I saw a bad investment. I looked at my sister and, for the first time in my life, I said the word, no. The silence in that restaurant was louder than a bomb. Ryan's face turned purple. But Rachel didn't cry. She didn't yell. She just got cold. You'll regret this. Sarah, she whispered, as I watched them walk out of the restaurant, leaving me with the bill. Of course I didn't feel guilt. I didn't feel sadness. I felt relief. It wasn't a fight. It was a business decision. I was finally cutting my losses. I went home. I didn't cry. I didn't even pace. I did what I do best. I opened my laptop and started a new Excel spreadsheet. If they were going to treat my life as a business, I was finally going to run the audit. I started running a query on my own life. I cross-referenced 10 years of bank statements against WhatsApp messages, email requests, and Venmo histories. I became a forensic accountant for my own family's emotional fraud. The numbers didn't just add up. They told a story. Row 4, mom emergency, $25. Ling ling ling. Cross-referenced with email. Sarah honey. Save me. Row 12, Ryan. Business debt, $15. Ling ling ling. Cross-referenced with text. Need this. You're the only one who gets it. Row 32, Megan grad school, $12. Ling ling ling. Cross-referenced with Venmo, thank you, thank you, thank you. I owe you my life. On and on it went. Line by line. Betrayal by betrayal. It wasn't just the big amounts. It was the death by 1,000 cuts, the $200 dinners, the $80 Ubers, the can you spot me requests that were never, ever paid back. In 5 years alone, the total was $135,000. I stared at the number. It was cold, hard, and undeniable. But I wasn't done. My analyst brain was still running. I had a hunch. The wellness cafe pitch felt too sloppy. They must have tried something else first. I went to my email and searched for keywords Rachel, loan, business plan. And that's when I found it. A chain of emails from 4 months ago. The subject line was urgent cafe files. It was between Rachel and Megan, my cousin. Megan, the one whose life I saved with $12,000 for tuition. I opened the thread. My blood went cold. Rachel, did you fix the numbers like I said? We need it to look profitable last year. Megan, Rachel. This is really risky. This is falsifying a tax return. Rachel, are you in or out? Megan, don't forget who paid for that fancy degree of yours. Megan, okay. Okay, I did it. The new profit and loss statement is attached. It shows a 30% profit. Just. Please delete this thread. I sat back, my hands shaking. But not from fear. It was clarity. They weren't just manipulative. They weren't just takers. They were conspiring. Megan, the person I'd helped most after my sister, had actively participated in fraud to help Rachel, and then used my money as leverage. And at that Easter lunch, Megan would be there, smiling, after just clapping for me to be kicked out. I clicked print. I printed the Excel sheet, all 7 pages. I printed every Venmo transaction. I printed every pleading email, and with a grim satisfaction, I printed the entire 12-page email thread between Rachel and Megan. I slid the stack into a black leather portfolio. The audit was complete. The data was clean. And I was ready for the presentation. The 3 months between No and Easter were a masterclass in psychological warfare. My mother, Karen, became the queen of the heavy sigh. She'd call me every few days. Not to yell, but to mourn. I don't know where I went wrong as a mother. Sarah, she'd whisper, her voice cracking. You're just so cold. You're tearing this family apart over a little bit of money. A little bit. My father, Robert, practiced the art of silent complicity. He just stopped responding. My texts went unread. My calls went to voicemail. He was a ghost, a willing accomplice to my sister's narrative that I was the problem. And Rachel, she went completely dark. No calls. No texts. Just a suffocating, satisfied silence. She knew. With my mother and father doing her dirty work, she didn't have to lift a finger. Then, 1 week before Easter, the email arrived. The subject was, "A fresh start, Easter reconciliation lunch." It was from Rachel. It was sent to the whole family. It was full of saccharin. Performative language about healing, moving forward, and rebuilding what was broken. She'd booked a private room at a restaurant. My treat, she wrote, which I knew meant she was using our parents' credit card, which I would probably end up paying for. But it was the last line that caught my eye. We'll also be discussing the new family trust to make sure everyone is protected and secure for the future. There it was, the trap. It wasn't a reconciliation, it was an execution. They weren't inviting me to heal, they were inviting me to a public tribunal where they could finally, officially, cast me as the villain. This trust was the weapon they'd built to replace the guilt trips. I RSVP'd, looking forward to it. I picked up the leather folder from my desk. I made 6 copies. And now, here we are, back in the private room. Rachel's scream is still echoing off the walls. She's backed against the wall, hyperventilating, pointing at me. You monster. My brother-in-law, Ryan, snatches the folder from her. His face is a mask of arrogant confusion. What is this? Sarah, some kind of joke. He rips it open. He sees the first page. It's the cover sheet I'd made. A single, beautiful table. Column A, date. Column B, recipient. Column C, amount. And at the very bottom, in bold 72-point font, the grand total $135,000. Ryan's smug expression just dissolves. He goes pale. What is this? He whispers. It's the audit, I said, taking a calm sip of my water. My mother, Karen, leans forward, squinting. Con giữ sổ sách? You kept records. Mẹ không bao giờ nhớ, I said, my voice perfectly steady. Nên con phải làm. You never remembered. So I had to. Ryan's hands are shaking now. He's not angry, he's terrified. He flips past the spreadsheets. past the Venmo receipts, past the email chains of my mother begging for cash, and he lands on a page near the end. His face goes from white to a sickly gray. He looks up at me. His jaw slack. He can't even speak. That page, I said, helping him out, is for you, Ryan. It's the hotel bill. 3 nights at a 5-star hotel. Under his name. A $7,500 charge he'd claimed was an investor conference. And right next to his name, on the reservation, Ms. Victoria. Ryan's breath caught. He looked down at the hotel bill. Then up at Rachel. His face a mask of disbelief. Rachel, he said, his voice dangerously low. Who is Victoria? My sister froze. She lunged for the folder. But Ryan yanked it back. That's private. Ryan, how dare you? $7,500. He hissed, reading the line item. You told me it was an investor conference. You told me you were alone. Who is Victoria? She's a colleague. You're being insane. A colleague, Ryan repeated, his thumb shaking as it flipped to the next page in the folder. He stopped. What is this? He whispered. He wasn't looking at Rachel anymore. His eyes scanned the new page. And he looked across the table, his voice rising in confusion. Megan, is this your email? If you could have heard the silence in that room, it was absolute. Everyone. My mother. My father. My uncle snapped their heads toward my cousin, Megan, who I had paid $12,000 for. Looked like a trapped animal. Her face went ashen. She reached for her water glass, but her hand was shaking so badly, she knocked it over. The glass shattered on the floor, and she let out a small, terrified squeak. Chow. Chow. You. Ryan roared. Standing up so fast, his chair screed against the floor. You helped her falsify tax returns. I did it. The new profit and loss is attached. Rachel finally found her voice. But it was pure panic. Shut up. Ryan, this isn't about Megan, this is about you. Looking at my private papers. This is about Victoria. Ryan just laughed. It was a horrible, broken sound. This is fraud. Rachel, actual prison time. That, he jabbed a finger at the hotel bill, is just you being a cheater. Again. Stop it, my mother. Karen? Suddenly shrieked. Both of you. We are in public. Stop it. She turned her face, red and contorted. Not to Rachel. Not to Ryan. But to me? You did this. Sarah, you brought this filth here. You've ruined everything. I just sat there, watching the fire spread. My fault. It was always my fault. If I didn't pay, I was selfish. If I paid, I was enabling. If I stayed silent, I was cold. And now that I finally showed them the truth, I was the monster. But I didn't cause this. I just turned on the lights. I realized, in that moment, what I had always been to them. Rachel needed a villain to justify her own endless failures. By painting me as toxic and cold, she could avoid the agonizing truth that she was the one who was irresponsible, deceitful, and cruel. I wasn't her sister. I was her scapegoat. Every family has one. I was just tired of being theirs. Karen, stop. My father, Robert, said suddenly. His voice was low. She's right. My mother whipped her head around to him. Right, Robert. She's destroying this family. She didn't cheat, my father yelled back, pointing at Ryan. She didn't commit fraud, he pointed at Rachel. She just paid for everything. They did this Megan finally broke, dissolving into loud, ugly sobs. I just wanted her to stop asking, she cried. Looking at me, I didn't know. I didn't know she was lying to Ryan. I swear, you're just as guilty as she is, Ryan shouted at her. I'm going to ruin you. Rachel screamed, her blogger sweetness completely gone. You and your little Victoria, I'm going to take everything. It was beautiful. In a terrible way. They were finally eating each other alive. And I hadn't said a word. The screaming and crying went on for a full minute. A messy, pathetic opera of accusations. Ryan yelling about prison. Rachel screaming about Victoria. Megan just weeping. Snot and mascara running down her face. Finally, my father, Robert, slammed his hand on the table. Enough, he bellowed. All of you stop it. We're in public. The room went quiet, save for Megan's ragged sobs. He turned to me, his face exhausted. Sarah, you've made your point. Now, put that in thing away. We'll deal with this at home. Deal with it, I asked. I finally stood up. The scraping of my chair legs was the only sound. There's nothing to deal with. Dad, you're right. I've made my point. I reached into my handbag, past my wallet, past my keys, and pulled out a second envelope. A simple, white, legal-sized envelope. I didn't slide this one. I tossed it onto the center of the table. It landed on top of the open folder, covering the evidence of their fraud. My mother, Karen, flinched. What? What now? Sarah, what more is there? The folder, I said, buttoning my coat, was about the past. It was the receipt for the $135,000 you all took from me. This is about the future. No one moved. Inside that envelope, you will find copies of the legal documents I had my attorney file this morning. The first is a revocation of my status as medical power of attorney for both Mom and Dad. The second is the revocation of my financial power of attorney. The third removes my name as the primary emergency contact for every single person at this table. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. You're really cutting us off. Completely. Completely. I said, but that's not the best part. I looked at Rachel. Her eyes were wide. The fight completely gone. Replaced by a new, dawning horror. You see, Rachel, I said, that new family trust, you were so excited to vote me out of. You probably should have asked what it was first. What? What are you talking about? She whispered. I established that trust 2 years ago. Secretly. It was a private fund I set up to pay for Mom and Dad's elder care. I set it up so that you and Ryan would never have to worry about it. So I could handle the financial burden of their aging. So they could live in dignity. The only person who ever contributed to that fund was me. All of the money in it was mine. I picked up my purse. I walked to the door. I paused, my hand on the handle, and looked back at the wreckage of my family. All of them frozen, staring at that white envelope. The family trust you just kicked me out of. It's empty. I closed the account at 9 a.m. this morning. Congratulations on the vote. Oh, and by the way, I said, the lunch is taken care of. My treat. I walked out of the private room, through the bustling restaurant, and stepped out onto the sidewalk. The spring air was cool and clean. I took a deep breath, and for the first time in my entire life, I didn't feel obligated. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel angry. I just felt free. Have you ever had to make a hard choice to protect your own peace? Share your story in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, Don't forget to like and subscribe.